Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Stranger Things season 4 part 1. Let's talk about it. So many of you guys all know that throughout this week I have been catching up on the entirety of Stranger Things because I had never actually watched this show that is one of the most popular shows on the entirety of Netflix's platform. Somehow over the years I had missed it. I had never really been interested in diving into it. I think mostly because I'd heard that it was like a horror series, and that put me off because some of you guys will know I am not a horror girly. Okay, I am a scaredy cat. Okay, so I tend to avoid horror shows, but I finally bit the bullet this week because I actually thought that season 4 would be the final season of the show, so I thought I would go ahead and catch up and review the first part of the series. But it turns out that it is not the final season. It's in fact the penultimate season, so we are going to be getting a season 5, and the likelihood is that season 5 will also be split up into 2 parts, each part being just as long as one season anyways. So in reality we're getting about 4 seasons of the show between season 4 and season 5, and that makes complete sense because, again, as I said, you know, Stranger Things is one of the most popular and iconic series on the entirety of Netflix's platform, so it makes sense that they're going to want to squeeze as much out of this show as they possibly can. But the difference between Stranger Things and some other shows that have been squeezed to death before they eventually exit is that Stranger Things somehow keeps getting better. I don't know how they do it, but guys, season 4 was good. And this is coming from someone who's been watching all of these seasons back to back to back to back. Season 4 part 1 was excellent. Okay, so we're going to be going through my thoughts on season 4 part 1, as well as of course touching on my thoughts on Stranger Things as a whole now that I have watched it. But before we get into all of that good stuff, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. And also be sure to follow me on Twitter. I have been sharing my thoughts on Stranger Things all week on Twitter, so if you're interested in hearing my thoughts about TV shows and movies that I sometimes don't have a chance to review here, you can go ahead and follow me there. Now, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on Stranger Things season 4 part 1. So first of all, as I mentioned previously, I do think that season 4 of Stranger Things is one of the best seasons that the show has had yet. And it's just shocking because you'd think as the seasons go on, you know, the show would get worse and worse. Perhaps it would lose a lot of that steam that it once had, especially out the gate with the perfection that was season 1. But no, it turns out that season 4 kind of revigorated this franchise. It kind of gave the show a new breath of fresh air, a new sense of life and purpose by introducing, you know, some new concepts, especially with the personal lives and academic lives of the younger kids, and also introducing a cool new villain that we could totally get behind. Someone that was slightly different to the villains of the previous seasons, which have all been quite similar and interconnected. Now, it's all still connected to the Upside Down and, you know, the crazy dark dimension that exists underneath Hawkins. Okay, but at the same time there is that new angle which is revealed in the final episode of part 1, which we'll get into, and I do think that adds a level of excitement, and it makes the villain have a bit more of a personal connection to one of the characters, which I think again helps reinvigorate the franchise. Another thing that was notably amped up when it came to this season was definitely the horror elements and the gore elements. Now, like I said, I was always reluctant to check out this show because I heard it was a horror series and I'm not a horror girly, okay, but I do think, you know, throughout the seasons there have been fluctuations when it came to the horrorness, the amount of horror the horror arena. Okay. When it came to how scary each of these seasons were, throughout the seasons there were definitely certain scenes and moments that were notably terrifying, but otherwise there would be stretches of time where there were very few scary moments and you forgot that this was supposed to be a horror show. But oh boy, in season 4 part 1, like, you are reminded almost immediately what this show is truly about. There are some horrific sequences, some body horror, some, you know, crazy contortions that bodies have to go through, bones cracking. in the sky. You get a sense of, you know, like The Exorcist. You get a sense of all of these different, you know, horror inspirations that are injected into the show that truly bring us a range of different styles of horror that can be depicted on screen. And again, just breathing that fresh new life into the series, which I think it really did need after the previous seasons had very similar styles of horror be repeated, as well as very similar villains. As can be expected, all of these terrifying, horrifying sequences in season 4 of Stranger Things come at a very high price tag when it comes to these special effects and the CG. And it turns out that each episode of season 4 of Stranger Things cost roughly $30 million. $30 million. Now, I don't know if Netflix can continue to shell out that amount of money per episode for one show. Now, like I said, this is one of the most popular shows on the platform, but still, one show. I don't know if Netflix can afford to do that for much longer. That's probably why they're wrapping things up for season 5. I don't know how many episodes season 5 will have in light of how expensive this show has become. And this is not all because of the special effects. It's also because these actors are now bigger stars than ever, you know, ever since the show started. And so they obviously have to have a huge paycheck for every single episode. I believe Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour and Winona Ryder get like $350K each episode. So yeah, things have gotten quite expensive over in the Stranger Things camp. So I do anticipate that perhaps Netflix will try and make the next season a bit shorter, or other projects will suffer. Like, in reality, that's probably what's gonna happen is that Stranger Things will be left untouched because it's such a huge juggernaut for the platform, but other series will definitely feel their belts kind of cinching in as Netflix tries to pull back on its spending. As it stands, I do think that the show benefits incredibly from this huge budget because these sequences are just so believable. The CG is seamless. It's movie level, like it's truly blockbuster level CG for a TV show, and it truly speaks to the change, the shift that we have seen in this golden age of television, where, you know, CG on TV shows used to look horrific. It used to look just so ugly, so like far back in comparison to what was being seen in films. But now we're seeing TV shows be on par when it comes to their special effects. Again, because they've gotten more expensive, you know, I think shows like Game of Thrones set the precedent for that, spending a shit ton of money per episode for a show. But as a result, it just feels like these shows are on par with their movie counterparts, and sometimes even better than, because the effects that we see for these horrifying, scary monsters are just seamless. Now, another element of season 4 that I really enjoyed was the story. I feel like season 4 really made an effort to really push these characters forward in terms of their, you know, character development, and in terms of the place that they're at in their lives, especially the younger children who are now going into high school and are experiencing these new things at school at this different stage of their life. I appreciated that because for a couple of seasons there, you know, while Stranger Things has largely been quite consistent in terms of quality, I do feel like there were a couple of seasons where we were middling around. Again, characters weren't really getting up to anything too different. You know, we had one season where Dustin had a girlfriend who everyone was convinced was imaginary. That was fun. That was fun, okay. But now we're actually starting to move on. Not only are we moving on in terms of the, you know, supernatural elements of the show, but also just in terms of the regular old teenage drama elements of the show, where their kids are now in high school and they're trying to find their footing, trying to find their identities in this new environment in light of everything that they've been through together, and also in light of the fact that they're no longer as, you know, one unit. Some of them have broken off and they've moved away because of the events that happened in season 3. And to be fair, this change in the storyline had to be done eventually, just because of how much the actors have grown since the previous season. Guys, I can't believe how much these kids have grown right in front of my eyeballs. And remember, I was watching all of this series like this entire week. So for me, it was just Monday when they were kids. It was just Monday when they were babies. And now all of a sudden they're like growing up right in front of my eyes. They look like fully fledged adults. I can't believe it. So yeah, it makes sense that the story had to kind of age them up and allow them to have their high school moments, because we have eyes. We can see we can see that these kids aren't middle schoolers anymore. Like, they are so old. They are so old. They're growing up so fast. Okay, so now we're going to be diving into my thoughts on each of the characters. Now, Stranger Things has about 856 characters, to be real. Like, to be fair. So we're not going to be going through each and every one of them in the same amount of detail. I am going to be touching upon some of my favorite characters and the most interesting plot points. The first ones up we have is actually the adult crew, just to kind of get them out of the way. So the adult crew is made up of Joyce, Murray, and Jim. Yes, Jim is back. Jim is back, guys. He's no longer deceased. When I saw season 3 trying to kill off Jim Hopper, I was like, not on my watch. Not on my watch. You're trying to kill off David Harbour. Try again, because that is not working out. So at the beginning of season 4 part 1, they quickly established that Jim Hopper is not actually dead. He is alive. He managed to survive that attack somehow. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Somehow he managed to survive, and now he's in some gulag in Serbia. Listen, he has literally been resurrected from the dead for season 4, only to suffer. Like, why would you do that to a fan favorite character? He's literally been suffering every day, every single second that he's on screen. It's unacceptable, quite frankly, but at least he's alive. At least there's hope, and he's alive, and all is well on that front. But he's alive barely. The guy's clinging on to dear life. Okay, he's breaking his foot. He got his hair shaved in this like horrible scene. Like, it is just, he's down bad. You have Joyce and Murray try to find Jim after they received this note from him in this like Russian doll, and they're like, oh my goodness, he could be alive. So they go on this little adventure together, which is cute. Okay, they sass each other and they go on this little adventure, only to be betrayed by the guy that was supposed to help them get Jim out of the gulag. Now, Jim actually had a man on the inside, you know, one of the guards in the gulag who was supposed to be helping him escape. And so Jim and that guard both ended up in trouble, and it was actually really funny because I couldn't help but notice that the guard is the actor from Game of Thrones. He's the guy with many faces from Game of Thrones. I loved his character. Okay, he's an icon. But yeah, so he's now in trouble because he was caught helping Jim out, and then they were sent on this like tournament with some of the other prisoners to basically, I guess, act as like sport, act as entertainment, because the prison somehow managed to get its hands on a demogorgon. There's a demogorgon in the prison, and the prisoners are being used to feed it, but he doesn't just want to eat, you know, dead prisoners. He doesn't want to eat lethargic prisoners. No. He wants the prisoners to give him a bit of a run for his money. But Jim is the only one who has had contact with a demogorgon before, because his life in Hawkins sucks. He knows what the demogorgons are like, and he knows their weaknesses. So he knew to steal a lighter and a little bit of vodka so that he could create a torch to fend off the demogorgon. But of course, whilst he was fending off the demogorgon against him, the demogorgon was going around eating everyone else. Like, I was like, this isn't the win that you guys think it is. Like, literally only 2 of you made it out, and the demogorgon ate everyone else. So yeah, it was a bit of a disaster, but at least he was alive. Like, that's all we care about. At least he was alive, and at that point Joyce and Murray had managed to find him, and he finally saw Joyce, and we all rejoiced. It was a beautiful moment. Okay, just her seeing that he was actually alive made it all worth it, even though they went through their whole shenanigans as well. So So that was the plot point surrounding Jim. It's pretty separate from everything else that's going on in America. I'm really happy to see Jim Hopper back. Like, the show wouldn't be the same without him as far as I'm concerned. We need him to have a reunion with his daughter, so he's not going anywhere. He's going to be just fine. He's going to make it back to Hawkins or California, wherever Al is at this point, and he needs to give her a massive hug when he sees her. Okay, so now let's go through the kids, and first ones up we have is the Hawkins gang. Now the Hawkins gang is going through it because they've finally reached high school, as I mentioned, and it's a whole different field. Like, it's a whole different set of rules that they have to abide by. They are considered the nerds, the dorks, or whatever. They're shunned in high school society, you know, that typical American high school stuff that we often see. And so they've been forced to seek refuge in the Hellfire Club, which is a club that's run by Eddie, this brand new character, and his gang. And I think Eddie is like a high schooler, but he was held back several years, and that's why he's like 20 years older than everyone else. But yeah, Eddie and the gang have welcomed the Hawkins gang in, and they have formed their own Dungeons and Dragons group. But to the rest of the Hawkins folk, their group is a little bit sketchy. Like, they think that they're Satan worshippers or something. They just have these preconceived notions about the Hellfire group that have nothing to do with what they actually get up to, which is literally just playing Dungeons and Dragons. Literally just playing Dungeons and Dragons, okay? But because they're the, you know, outsiders, because they're social pariahs, everyone just has these preconceived notions of them, which is a perfect setup for what's to come, by the way. But yeah, when it comes to the Hawkins gang, they definitely feel like their little group has been fractured now, because you have, you know, Will and Elle. They've moved halfway across the country to California. Then we have Lucas, who no longer wants to be seen as a freak in school, and he's joined the basketball team. He's trying to get in with the cool kids, and he manages to score this massive goal, or make the basket. Oh, I'm not a sports person, guys, please. But he manages to do well in a basketball match, and so the team starts to respect him, and they include him as one of their own. And that, of course, causes tension between the gang and Lucas, because he missed one of their meetings with the Hellfire Club in order to go to the basketball match anyways. So there is definitely a fracturing of the group. We often see this at the beginning of a Stranger Things season. Things aren't really working out for whatever reason, but then it's up to them to kind of come together as a team throughout the season, defeat whatever supernatural monsters exist in Hawkins, and then they'll finally be back together by the end of the show. We've been here, we've done that, and we bought the t-shirt. We know what's coming up, but it is a nice setup now because we do have a different environment in the form of the high school. So it's with these high school students that we actually get our first victims of our brand new villain, this demon creature. And the first victim that we see this season is actually this like high school cheerleader girl. She's the popular girl, okay? She's dating the most popular guy, you know, that kind of stereotypical character, but she is literally being haunted by demons. These demons are following her. They're showing her all of these different kinds of hallucinations and visions. She feels like she's going crazy, so she turns to Eddie to buy some drugs so that she can get some reprieve from this madness. But it turns out that she is way too late, because there was a very slim timeline on this, and the demon finally takes her over just when she's reached Eddie's house to get the drugs, and she ends up floating up in the sky, every bone in her body cracking all over. Just crack, 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 and she ends up dying with like her eyes clawed out. Like, it's a whole situation, guys. Okay, the body gore is real. And of course, because she was there in Eddie's place and there were no other witnesses, everyone suspects Eddie was behind this attack, even though that makes no goddamn sense. Why would he kill her, leave her body like mutilated, and then just disappear, not try to hide the evidence, like not try to back himself up? Like, literally, why would he do that in his own residence? That doesn't make any sense, but whatever. He becomes an easy target, and of course, because of his reputation, his association with the Hellfire Club, people think that he's a Satan worshipper, and it turns into this whole movement. But in terms of introducing Eddie as a brand new character, I really like him. I really enjoy him as a character. We don't see him much, and he was pretty much only placed on the show to suffer. There are some characters like this. And I feel like, you know, Billy was a good example of this. You know, he was just a character to bring suffering and to suffer himself. And then of course Barb, she was the OG character who was just brought on to suffer. But yeah, I do think that Eddie is the latest victim of the Stranger Things writing room. But I do think that he makes for a really cool character, especially because he is the only person that actually reaches out to the gang when they reach high school, and they actually have a lot in common. But unfortunately, because of how everyone else judges them, and also because of the fact that the girl died literally like in his house, you know, people target him immediately when everything goes to shit. And with the help of Nancy and Robin, the gang managed to figure out that this is being caused by some demon who exists in the Upside Down. And even though Elle closed the gates, he is managing to communicate to people in the real world, you know, telepathically, and basically torture them. Like, he is torturing these kids who have these traumatic experiences. It makes for easy bait for him somehow. And so there's this like timeline that's going on when, you know, the kids will experience these different symptoms, these headaches and shakes and everything, and then it will move along to actual visions and hallucinations, and that's when you know you are almost toast. And that's exactly what happens to Max, which is just heartbreaking. I don't think the show made a big enough deal about the fact that this girl was literally 24 hours away from dying. I think people were way too chill, you know, when they figured that out, personally. But after everything that happened in season 3, Max was quite distant from the rest of the gang. She lost her stepbrother and she was still going through it, and she didn't feel as connected to everyone else. She wasn't moving on like they were. But you know, when she finds out that she's dying, you know, when she finds out that this demon has gotten to her, she has all of these letters that she's handing out to everyone that she cares about, because she can see the end. Basically, she's come to terms with the fact that she doesn't have much longer. And then there's this really touching scene between her and Lucas where he says, I don't want a letter from you, I'm right here, you're right here, let's just talk. You know, it feels like that communication between them has really broken down in this past year or so since they were together. But thank goodness for Lucas, because Nancy and Robin managed to figure out that the way to escape the kind of delusions and the hallucinations is by playing your favorite song your favorite song in the real world. And her favorite song is one by Kate Bush, and so they started playing it out loud just when she was about to be taken over by the demon, and in the end they managed to save her. And to be fair, Max was quite resilient as well. She was looking for a way to get out of that hellish place, so she also helped save herself. But I do think that was a really scary, terrifying moment where I was like, oh my god, are they gonna kill off Max? That is horrible. But unfortunately, Max isn't the last victim that the demon targets, and another kid ends up dead right in front of the eyes of the basketball team captain. And so he rallies the townspeople, who pick up their pitchforks ready to aim them towards Eddie. Eddie ends up on the run, and then they end up at the very same lake where that other kid died, and they end up falling into the Upside Down where this demon exists. And the first one down there is actually Steve, who I love. I love Steve. I love the character arc that Steve has gone through these past seasons. Like, if you think back to the character that he was in season 1, okay, where he sucked, where he was a literal bully, and now you see him hanging out with Dustin and the gang, like, he's just become so much more genuine, so much more likable. He is a little bit of a nerd now, but it's fine, like, it's cute. I really like Steve. But he ends up getting dragged to hell, literally dragged to hell by the mysterious forces of the Upside Down. And then you have Nancy jumping in soon afterwards, right behind him, in order to save him, which I thought was telling. The whole season they set up this idea that maybe Nancy and Jonathan aren't gonna make it as a couple. You know, they are split apart because Jonathan moved to California with his mother and his brother. There is definitely this idea that maybe he and Nancy have kind of grown apart a little bit, and perhaps she might be returning to Steve. And I think that is okay, especially considering how much Steve has changed as a character. Like, his character arc has been the steepest of all the characters on this show. But anywho, Nancy jumps in after him, and then of course Robin jumps in after her, and then Eddie is just left there like, oh, I'm alone on this boat, like I don't want to be the only one who doesn't jump in. So he also jumps in, later revealing that he did feel like a bit of a coward for a second there. But they end up going to the mysterious house where it all took place. You know, Nancy and and Robin unveiled this whole story about how this started back in the 50s, where there was this family that moved to this mysterious house, something to do with spiders, which I detest. Which I detest. Okay, boo spiders. We go back to the haunted house, this time in the Upside Down, and then they come across the demon and his, like, you know, viney friends, and it's a bit of a shit show. They do manage to find a way to communicate with the gang in the real world using Morse code, and then they end up finding a way to exit the Upside Down, and just when my sister Nancy was gonna leave, she ends up trapped. Barb is this ghost that continues to haunt Nancy even like 3 seasons after her first appearance, so she ends up stuck there, and the gang had to find a way to save her, hopefully by the end of season 4. So finally, the next group up that we have is the California Club, and that includes Joyce for a brief period of time before she goes off to Alaska, as well as Jonathan, Will, and of course my girl Elle. Now, first of all, just like the gang in Hawkins, we see the California Club also reaching high school. Will and Elle are officially in high school now, and it sucks. It sucks, especially for Elle. Guys, I was so upset that this season, literally, speaking of suffering, this season literally existed to make Elle suffer. Why? Why? I love Elle, and I was so heartbroken to see her suffering in high school with a bunch of high school teenagers who don't know anything. They don't know what she's been through. They don't know who she is, but they're bullying her. And I just got so angry. I was like, how dare you? How dare you bully? She saved the world. She saved you all. Several times for several seasons. Oh, I was so upset. I was really upset to see this dumb high school kids bullying Elle. But yeah, there were cringe moments as well. Like when she tries to use her powers in front of everyone. Oh my god, you can't make this stuff up. It was heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. And when she made that, like, a cute little module of her life with Jim, her deceased adoptive father, and people are laughing at her. I genuinely don't understand bullying just in general, but these kids, ooh. And the thing is, right, so we get to the roller skates situation, that scene. The thing is, during that scene, I was like absolutely vouching for Elle to do something crazy. Actually, I was literally like, Elle, we've tried the peaceful route. Okay, we've tried reason, we've tried ignoring, conceal, don't feel, but now we need to give them hell. Now we need to, like, I really wanted her powers to set in that moment where they were at the roller skate ring, but instead she ends up bashing that girl, Angela, that's her name, Angela. She ends up bashing her with her roller skates, and I applaud it. I'm so sorry. Does that make me evil? Don't care. I applaud it. That was truly justified in my opinion. That girl sucked. Like, that girl literally, her and her friends who stood by and did nothing, by the way, sucked. Imagine being so much of a sucky person that you would literally make someone stand in the middle of a roller skate ring and just point and laugh at them. Just literally point and laugh. Do you have nothing else to do with your lives? Your pathetic, meaningless lives. I was so annoyed, guys. Like, truly, what am I witnessing? This bullying that I'm witnessing against a character who deserves the world. She literally just lost her father, her adoptive father, the one who didn't treat her like a literal weapon, okay? And now you want to subject her to this. Oh god, I was so upset. But then it gets worse. It's worse because she has been communicating with Mike, and Mike is all the way in Hawkins, that hellish place. He's all the way in Hawkins, but they've been sending each other letters, and she's been telling him that everything is going okay, that she's made a ton of friends, that Angela, her prime bully, is actually her bestie. And so when Mike comes to visit for spring break, he has different expectations for what's really going on, until Will reveals that it was all a lie. It was all a lie, and she just wanted to portray herself as being happier than she actually was. And I think Will is kind of out of line for revealing that to Mike, especially because Mike didn't do anything. Especially because he didn't do anything. Like, he didn't step in to help his girlfriend or anything. He literally stood there uselessly watching as Elle did what needed to be done, as far as I'm concerned. So I do think Will was kind of out of line. I did get a little hint of, like, jealousy from Will. I don't know if they're going to go in that direction for the character, but I have seen that some people speculating that Will might be into Mike, and that's why he gets so upset when he sees him with Elle. But I think they're spinning it as like, oh, he's upset about being a third wheel and the fact that he and Mike were besties and now they're not. But that intensity of emotion that Will always has just feels like a bit more to me. So we'll see in the second part of season 4. If they don't address this by the second half of season 4, then it's just bad writing as far as I'm concerned. But anywho's, Will is the one to reveal this, and it causes a lot of tension between Mike and Elle, as you can imagine. And also Elle is at this point where she feels really insecure about herself and she's questioning her identity. I mean, even just within this season, you have this poor girl be referred to as Jane, Elle, 11 again. So there's definitely an identity crisis going on when it comes to her, and that's only made worse when unfortunately she faces the consequences of her actions. I disagree with this. I disagree with the police getting involved, whatever. But why don't they arrest Angela for bullying, whatever. But they get involved, fine. They get involved, and obviously Elle is in a very dangerous position because people are always out there looking for her, and her being on the system basically alerts everyone that she's here in California, and she gets picked up, abducted by that doctor who's on the right side of the government. There are two sides of the government, the bad side and the worst side, as far as I'm concerned, on this show at least, and in real life. So we see the bad side of the government taking her back into the arms of Papa. Oh, when I saw that man on screen, I got chills. Yep, I did. I got literal chills up my spine. I was like, how is he around? How is he alive still? I thought we dealt with this in season 2. He literally sucks though. Like, he literally sucks. But after the events that play out in that horrible, terrifying laboratory, I don't even know what to think about Papa anymore, because it just feels like things get from bad to worse over there. So the good guys take Elle back to the lab to try and restore her powers so they can fight against this like major threat that's happening all the way in Hawkins again. Papa's big plan to do this is to basically traumatize her over and over again to get her to be as powerful as she once was. And that's when she's introduced to one of the wards working at the lab. Now, I feel like this entire sequence is in the past. Correct me if I'm mistaken, but she's reliving the sequences that played out when she was younger. It's basically telling the story of how she met this ward called Henry, and he ended up helping her. He gave her some good advice about restoring her powers, and also he helped her against the bullies within the facility, so she felt like she could trust him. And then one day he tells her that he can help her escape, but he can't come along with her because he has a tracking chip in his neck, and she helps him out. You know, she managed to get her powers back, so she helps him kind of remove the chip from his neck. And that chip not only tracked him, but it also weakened him. And the second that it was out of this man's neck, he caused hell. He brought hell on earth on that entire facility, killing everyone left, right and center. So we find out then that the vision that we got at the beginning of season 4 was actually a memory that Elle had where she was facing up against one. You know, Henry turned out to be one, and he was the most powerful of them all, and he had wreaked havoc on everyone in the facility to the point where Elle was the only person who could take him down, and that's why she'd ended up opening the gates to the upside down, shoved him in there, and then eventually in season 3 she'd closed those gates. But he's back and he's communicating with people in the real world, causing mayhem once again, just like he did with his own family when in the 50s. Oh, it came together. It came together brilliantly. That was a great plot twist. I did suspect that Henry was one, because he had all of this information about how to control your powers, and he was speaking as though it was from personal experience. So I suspected that he was one. And also he called Papa Papa. I don't know if everyone else does that, but yeah, he called that horrible man Papa. So I was like, maybe he was one of the victims before, but it turns out he was one. Not only was he one though, but he was like super evil. Like, he was messed up. Okay, he killed his entire family except for his father, who was left suffering suffering forevermore. And his father was actually imprisoned for the death of his family. So it was just hell. Like, it was just a nightmare. This guy brings hell wherever he goes. And so eventually, when he was trapped in the Upside Down, he became the demon. He became Vecna. And now that we know who he is and what he's capable of, all that's left to determine is how to take him down. So I can't really give season 4 a rating yet because this is only part 1. But overall, I feel like season 4 is definitely off to a great start. I mean, honestly, like I said before, part 1 is already almost as long as a whole season of the show anyways. But I do feel like the pacing never felt dragged out. It didn't feel like there were any filler episodes that were just wasting time or biding time. It felt like each step was crucial to the storytelling. The way that they managed to connect everything together and bring us that plot twist was really, really effective, and I was engaged from start to finish. So I am looking forward to seeing the second part of season 4. I believe it drops on the 1st of July, and I have very much been enjoying my Stranger Things journey this entire week. I would definitely say that so far my favorite seasons are season 1, 3, and this first half of season 4, and hopefully that continues on to the second half. But now that I told you guys my thoughts on Stranger Things season 4 part 1, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this first half of the season down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up, and also my review of Stranger Things season 4 part 2. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.